Interior, apartment, day. We see the back of Smith, think Aaron Eckhart, standing in the kitchen while the dead body of the Mark is in the living room, face down. Smith is wearing leather gloves while wiping a gun clean with a handkerchief. His cell phone is pressed between his shoulder and ear.
It's done.
Smith holds the gun up to the light, notices another smudge on the side of the barrel, and wipes it again. He places the handkerchief on the kitchen counter and inspects the gun's handle in the light. Pleased with the outcome, he tucks the gun in his pants behind his back. He folds the handkerchief in fours and places it in his jacket breast pocket. He then grabs the phone from his shoulder.
Yes, I'm sure. Nobody else was home.
Smith walks to the Mark's body. He squats down and checks the Mark's pockets. He reaches into a pocket and takes out a cell phone. We see the phone has low battery power. Smith stands up and places the phone on the charging dock on the desk next to the body. Smith then notices an unlevel picture frame on the wall. He squints at it and tilts it up to the left to straighten it. Voice on cell phone.
Mr. Sangossi wants you to meet him at the usual spot at 3 for payment.
Smith squats back down to the body and reaches in another pocket and pulls out a wrinkled 4x6 yellow sheet of lined paper that is folded in half horizontally. He stands up and unfolds the paper while he walks over to the kitchen counter. We see to-do list for 10/14, written in black marker on the paper.
Yeah, okay. I'll be there.
Smith reads the paper silently and furrows his eyebrows with perplexity. He flips it over to see if anything is on the other side, then turns it back to the front. He puts the phone in his pocket. He places the paper on the counter and smooths it out 4 times in hopes of erasing the wrinkles. He is agitated. He leans into the counter. His eyes remain staring at the paper. Smith looks up and sees a calendar on the side of the refrigerator. He notices the date is October 14th, with the previous dates crossed out in black marker. Smith becomes more agitated. He turns around and runs his fingers through his hair. He walks out of the kitchen into the living room and back to the kitchen. He stops by the counter and takes out a small vial from his jacket pocket. He opens the vial and drops a pill into his hand and then closes the vial. Smith stares at the words on the paper close up on the list. He pops the pill in his mouth and swallows. He places the vial back in his pocket. Taking a deep breath, Smith looks at his watch. He directs his attention to the dish drying rack on the right. He grabs a spatula in one hand and a knife in the other from the rack and turns around, walking towards another kitchen counter. He hears a noise and turns back with the knife raised in the air. He stops for a few seconds, gazing around, but hears silence. He lowers the knife and returns to face the other kitchen counter to place the knife in the butcher block and the spatula in the utensil cup. Smith then turns and looks at the refrigerator. He notices 4 magnets in disarray. He lines up the magnets, one under the other. He turns back to the counter with the yellow paper and glances again at the words on the list. He reaches for his phone in his jacket and makes a phone call.
Yeah, it's me. I'm going to be a little bit late. Tell Sangossi I won't be there until 5.
Okay, but he ain't going to like it.
I'll worry about that when I see him.
Smith hangs up the phone and places it back in his pocket. Smith takes off his gloves, folds them gently, and places them in his jacket. He puts on yellow kitchen gloves hanging over the kitchen sink. He begins to clean the dirty dishes in the sink meticulously. He checks each item in the light for dirt and smudges, and then places the item on the drying rack delicately. He continues until there are no dishes left. He then inquisitively checks under the sink for the trash can. He empties the kitchen strainer from the sink into the trash can. He takes off the kitchen gloves and returns them in the position he found them in. He washes his hands with soap over the sink, scrubbing under his nails thoroughly, and dries them with a paper towel. Then he throws the paper towel out in the trash can and kicks the can back under the sink. He takes down his leather gloves and places them back on his hands. He takes out a pen from his jacket pocket and uses it to cross off. Number 1, clean dishes from the list. Smith puts his pen back, turns around and notices a dry cleaning receipt on the side of the refrigerator. He grabs the receipt, folds it in 4, and puts it in his pocket. He then walks over to the desk. He looks through some miscellaneous papers and finds a few papers clipped together with a post-it attached that says, "Mail bills." He looks through the pile, puts the checks in the envelopes with the invoice paper that is found clipped to each check and envelope, and seals the envelope with Scotch tape he finds on the desk. Smith looks around the desk some more and finds an RSVP invitation to a wedding to be sent in by 10/16. He fills in the RSVP using his pen. He writes the name of the Mark Silverstein, checks off, respectfully declines, places it in the envelope, and seals it with tape. He searches around the desk again. He gets up with envelopes in his hand and walks over to the kitchen counter. He looks at the list and notices number 3, get stamps. With a sigh, he crosses off number 2, paid bills. He folds the list in 4s and puts it in his jacket. He heads to the door with envelopes in his hand, grabs a key on a key rack by door, shuts the door. We hear him lock it from outside. Interior post office, day. Smith enters inside a post office. He walks up to a self-service kiosk to purchase stamps. He grabs money out of his wallet, inserts it into the machine, and buys a small book of stamps. He retrieves the stamps and pulls out the sealed envelopes from his jacket. He places 1 stamp on each envelope. He smooths the stamp down 4 times. Each time he puts 1 on his envelope. When he is done, he gathers all of the envelopes together and taps them on the counter to make them in alignment with one another. He walks over to the mailbox and places them in the box one by one, checking each time to make sure the envelope cleared the inside door. After he mails his last envelope, he takes down his pen and the to-do list, crosses off number 3, get stamps, on the list. He folds the paper back in 4s, returns paper and pen back to his pocket. He checks his watch and exits out the door. Smith walks down the street and stops in front of a deli. He walks in the deli and heads to the milk section. He goes through each fat-free milk bottle, checking the dates to find the one that is longest to expire. He finds the bottle he wants and brings it to the counter. The cashier rings him up.
It's $2.59.
Smith throws down $3 bills on the counter. Cashier collects change and hands it over to Smith.
Keep it.
Exterior, sidewalk, outside of deli, day. Smith exits the deli. He takes out the list and his pen, crosses off number 4, buy milk. He folds the list in 4s and places it back in pocket and walks off. Smith looks at his watch and stops in front of the dry cleaners. He takes out a dry cleaning ticket and verifies the name on the ticket is the name on the store sign. Exterior, outside of dry cleaners, day. Cut to Smith exiting the dry cleaners with clean shirts over arm. He takes out the list and pen, crosses off number 5, pick up dry cleaning, folds list in 4s and places it back in pocket. He walks off scene. Interior, apartment, day. Smith enters the Marks' apartment. He places the milk in the refrigerator. He takes the dry cleaning out of the bag and walks to the Marks' bedroom closet. He stares at the closet in disgust. He hangs the clothes in the closet with the tip of the hangers facing inward and the front of the shirts facing to the left. He breathes in with a sigh of aggravation and turns the other hanging clothes to face the same direction. He closes the closet and walks back into the kitchen. He throws away the dry cleaning bag and the trash under the sink and wipes down one more spot on the counter with a paper towel. He throws the paper towel in the trash, kicks the trash can back under the sink, and walks to exit apartment. Interior, diner, day. Smith enters diner. He walks straight to back and sits down in a booth. He sees Mr. Sangossi is already seated. Mr. Sangossi is drinking a coffee and halfway finished a piece of pie.
You had to keep me waiting.
I had to tie up a few loose ends.
A waitress comes to the table for Smith's order. Can I get you anything, hon?
Just a black coffee to go. Thank you.
The waitress exits.
What's your hurry? You just sat down.
I've got some place to be, so I just want what I came for.
Mr. Sangossi pulls out a manila envelope from under the table and slides it to Smith.
$5K, as promised.
Waitress re-enters and hands Smith a coffee and a to-go cup. Here you go. Smith looks up and nods in response. He takes out 2 singles from his wallet and throws it down on the table. He begins to get up.
You're not gonna count it?
No time. Besides, I don't want to get my hands dirty.
Smith grabs the manila envelope and heads towards the door.
Charlie's gonna call you tomorrow with the next assignment.
Smith nods at Mr. Sangossi and exits, closing the door behind him. Exterior, outside of church, day. We see Smith walk down a street and stop at a church. He takes out a different folded piece of paper that is white from his jacket and a pen. On the paper, we see new list that says, to-do list for 10/14 on the top. Below it says, number 1, take care of Mark, already crossed. Smith then crosses off number 2, meet Sangossi at diner. At 3, the 3 is already crossed off with a 5 written next to it. We then see number 3, meeting. Smith then enters the church and closes the door behind him. We see a sign on the door that says, 5:30 p.m., OCD anonymous meeting downstairs.